So we've been following Jesus with the help of Luke in his gospel. And let's be honest, Luke has taken us to quite a few scary places, hasn't he? He's taken us to a raging storm where the disciples thought they were going to drown. He's taken us to the tombs of Gerasene, where we met a violent, demon-possessed man. He's taken us to a hostile Samaritan village where Jesus and his disciples were just not welcome. But today, Luke takes us to a much more familiar place, a place we know really, really well, a place where we spend much of our everyday time. He takes us to a home setting. And as he does so to bring home a couple of really important lessons, one relating to serving and then the other relating to salvation. So shall we take a look together? So firstly, we can see Martha's welcome. Verse 38, as Jesus and his disciples were on the way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. And she had a sister called Mary. So Luke is usually so hot on detail, isn't he? But not so here. Luke doesn't mention the name of the village. He just says that it was a certain village. And he doesn't mention the name Lazarus, which to some of us, I'm sure, seems a little bit strange. And those facts have led some people to believe that this was a different Mary and Martha to the ones we meet in John chapter 11 and in chapter 12. We're not going to enter deeply into that debate at all. We don't really have the time, and nor do I think any time spent on that debate would be profitable to us. But much more important, I think, than identifying who this Mary and Martha were, is for us to identify who we are in this story. Who are you most like? Are you more like Martha? Or are you more like Mary? It's a really important question to ask because one of them receives a rebuke and the other one is greatly praised. Having read all of the arguments this week, I believe we have really good reason to stick with the traditional identification here of Mary and Martha as the sisters of Lazarus and the residents of a village called Bethany. And if that's who they were, then we can be sure that Jesus knew this family really well. In fact, he loved them like family. So Jesus wept at Lazarus' funeral. Mary anointed Jesus' feet in preparation for his burial. And Martha hosted a dinner in honor of Jesus after the raising of Lazarus from the dead. So Jesus here is seen at the home of friends. So here in this story, we have a scene that's not difficult for us to imagine. It's not a stormy sea. It's not a hostile tomb. It's not a hostile village. It's a home setting. Here's a story that should be really easy for all of us to relate to this morning. So Martha in this first sentence is portrayed as a welcoming host. Come in, Jesus. It's really great to see you again. Let me take your coat. Hey, Mary, Jesus has called. Let me go and put the kettle on. And Jesus is visiting some very ordinary people in a very ordinary place. A home setting. Somewhere we know well. A home filled with love, but not a place absent of conflict or difficulty. And I wonder, does that sound familiar? We're very familiar with home, but home is not always absent of conflict and difficulty. I think we can really connect into this story really, really easily. And our homes are places where Jesus will meet with us. But in our homes, even there, even in that place of familiarity and security, even there's a real danger of distraction. Jesus will meet us there, but the danger of distraction, even in a home setting, can mean that we miss the joy and the blessing of having Jesus with us there, as Martha did in this story. So a warm welcome to begin with. And secondly, we're going to note Martha's distractions. Martha opened her home to him, to Jesus. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. So two sisters, Mary and Martha, who are contrasted here for us by what they did next. Mary sat at the feet of Jesus listening to him, while Martha chose to busy herself with all kinds of other things. So it's not difficult to see the contrast being presented, but let's not miss the kind of contrast being presented. Not two sisters with very different personalities, two sisters here with very different priorities. I want us to take a look at Mary first. So she sat at the feet of Jesus. So in the culture of that day, it was not only unusual for a woman to sit at the feet of a teacher, it was actually quite radical, quite controversial, something routinely frowned upon. To sit at somebody's feet was to assume the posture of a student, and back then, in that place, it was sitting at the feet of a rabbi, a teacher, was reserved for the men only. But Jesus here, we can see, was happy to break those cultural norms of the day and welcome anybody who came with a humble posture, ready to listen and to learn, which is exactly what we see Mary doing here, sitting, listening and learning from Jesus. Sitting at someone's feet was not only a common posture for learning in that day, it also became a common phrase, something you might write on your CV. I wonder if you remember the Apostle Paul in his defense to the crowd at Jerusalem. He didn't say to them, I went to the University of Jerusalem. He said this, I was brought up at the feet of Gamaliel. Gamaliel being a renowned Jewish rabbi, a teacher of the time. So Mary sat unhurried and undistracted, listening and learning from Jesus, something she deemed to be the most important thing to do at that moment in time. She prioritized spending time with Jesus. So she's not being lazy or selfish. She was not doing nothing. She had chosen to do something of great significance and lasting value. And Jesus, later in the story, commends her for doing such a thing. Verse 40, but Martha. Here's a contrast. It's impossible to miss. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. I think we can safely say that Martha was a doer. There are not enough hours in the day for someone like Martha to get everything done that she wants to get done. I reckon she was a lists person, and top of her list would have been, I need to make a list. She's one of those people who had all of her day planned out, not a minute to be wasted, busy, busy, busy. You've met those kind of people, haven't you? People who love to tell you all that they've done and all that they have to do. And we'll see something of that in Martha in the second part of this verse. But before we note that, let's just ask this. What was it? Just what was it that was keeping her from doing as her sister was doing? What was keeping her from sitting at the feet of Jesus? So the NIV says she was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. So literally, this is how it reads. She was pulled about by much serving. And that word serving is a very familiar word to us. It's a word related to the word that we know as deacon. She was quite literally busy serving. It could be that she was busy serving dinner, but there's a clue a little later in the passage that she had more than dinner on her plate. Listen to how Jesus responds to it in verse 41. You are worried and upset by many things. So she was frantically serving in lots of ways. There seems to be a whole load of other things she was trying to do as well as serve this meal. We don't know precisely what she was distracted by, but from what Luke says and what Jesus says here, we can be confident that she was distracted by much serving. And much serving is a really good thing, right? Serving is the very thing Jesus came to do. Mark 10:45, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So Jesus, the great and glorious God, the majestic creator and sustainer of all things, the one who deserves praise from all things, wonderfully came to earth, not to be served, which was his divine right, but to serve. And in the ultimate act of service, lay down his life for the sake of others. The service is a good thing, right? For sure it is. It's a great thing. But you know, and it's one of the things that we can learn from this story, it's not always the best thing. As sinful human beings, we actually hold the potential to turn even serving, which is a good thing, into a bad thing. So I just want us to pause there for a moment and consider this question. When does serving, which is essentially a good thing, when does that become a bad thing? I wonder what you think. Firstly, it can become a bad thing when we do the right thing for the wrong reasons. So, for example, you maybe want to give a gift to the church or perform an act of a service in church, but you do it in such a way as to be seen by others. Do it to get recognition, to be seen as doing good, seen as serving. Okay, what have we done there? Yeah, we've turned a good thing into a bad thing. We've made serving all about us. It's become self-serving, something Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount warns us very clearly about. Secondly, we can do the right thing with a wrong attitude. So I can remember as a kid being told by mum to do some chores, and I did them, but not because I wanted to do them. I did them even though I hated doing them. Outwardly obedient, but inwardly angry and reluctantly. And I would do them as quickly and as noisily as possible as some kind of protest. And then thirdly, we can do the right thing, but with the wrong priorities. This is Martha-like service. So her doing sidelined Jesus. So she prioritized much serving over simple sitting with Jesus, fussing over the detail rather than enjoying God. And all of that left her irritable with Jesus and intolerant of Mary. If your serving ever leaves you fuming and finger-pointing like Martha, you know there's probably something not right. I wonder now if you can picture Martha slaving away. And every time she looked into the lounge, what does she see? She sees her sister sat down, not lifting a finger to help out. And as time goes on, we can perhaps feel Martha's mood simmering. It was only a matter of time until she boiled. And she did. That's what we see in verse 40, Martha's outburst. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha's outburst is quite remarkable, really, when you think about it. She calls Jesus Lord and then accuses him of not caring. Calls him Lord and then acts like she is Lord by diagnosing the problem, it's Mary, and by demanding that Jesus endorse her solution. Tell her to help me. Martha had worked herself up into such a state here. What we see is her really messing up quite badly. The person she should be getting mad with was not Jesus. The person she should be getting mad with was herself. Martha's problem wasn't in fact Mary, it was Martha. And yes, Martha did need help, but not in the way that she was demanding it. So Martha called Jesus Lord, but was showing all the signs that she was being ruled, controlled, mastered by a different kind of Lord, a dark Lord, the Lord of her own drive to get things done, to have everything perfect, to keep every plate spinning. So she prioritized what she considered urgent rather than what was most important. And Martha's rant here exposed her restlessness and opened the door for Jesus both to rebuke her and then to redirect her towards the much needed remedy. Martha's remedy, verse 41. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset by many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. Martha, Martha, can you hear the tenderness in the voice of Jesus? So in the Hebrew language, repetition is used for emphasis. The multiplication of a word is used to convey the multiplication of meaning. So in 2 Kings 25, verse 15, we come across this phrase of pure gold. But in the Hebrew, it's literally gold, gold. The repetition there conveying a multiplication of its purity. Genesis 14:10, we read there of a valley being full of deep pits. Literally, it's pits. And then when Isaiah had this vision of the Lord, as he hears the angelic beings crying out, they were not merely crying holy or holy, holy. They were crying out holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. There, the repetition conveying holiness to a degree that had never been heard of before. So as Jesus addressed Martha with the repetition of her name, he's conveying his deep, loving concern for her, multiplying the meaning, amplifying his feelings of compassion towards her in the situation. The way he addressed her, I think, was answering the question she'd asked earlier. Don't you care? Martha, Martha, of course I care. Just think about it. The fact that Jesus, the eternal Son of God, was there in the flesh and there in her living room was proof enough that he cared. And where was Jesus heading when he stopped off at her house? Yet he was en route to the cross. En route to the cross where he would demonstrate beyond all doubt just how much he cared. And if we head to the cross for a moment, you'll recall that whilst Jesus was on the cross, he used a repeated phrase there too, didn't he? My God, my God. How could Jesus on the cross convey anything of the agony he was suffering as he bore in his body the sins of his people? One of the ways would be through repetition. My God, why have you forsaken me? Bearing these sins is hurting me so much. But the fact that you've turned your face away from me is an agony too much to bear. Jesus cared enough to go to the cross and cared enough to be forsaken by his Father for us. Martha, Martha, of course I care. And what we see next is that Jesus cared enough to rebuke her, and he cared enough to redirect her to something better. Firstly, let's just note the rebuke. You are worried and upset by many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. So Jesus' remedy to Martha's distraction and discontentment was wonderfully simple and stunningly profound. What do you ask of somebody who's troubled by many things? Well, just one thing. What Jesus was asking of Martha was, here I think, something of a life laundry, a drastic declutter, a sort your life out special. I don't know if you ever watched that program, Sort Your Life Out. People have so much stuff, it's become impossible for them to function, to live well. And they're asked just to do one thing, to keep 50% of their belongings. That's all they need. And for Martha, the one thing she needed to do was simply to join Mary at the feet of Jesus. And that's just where Jesus directs her to. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. Literally, Mary has chosen the better portion. So Jesus, the God who made the universe and everything in it, was sitting in her lounge, and Martha is fussing about whether to serve napkins or no napkins. I wonder, can you believe that? How distracted, how deluded is she? How blinkered is she in this moment? And if one of the things that Martha was stressing about was serving a meal, then what Jesus said here is insightful, endearing, and actually quite funny. Mary's portion, what she has chosen, is way better than yours, Martha. Growing up in a family with 4 kids, portions were always a big deal. So when dinner was served, everyone was looking around the table to see who had the best portion, and many family arguments followed. Mary chose the best portion that day, which was to sit at the feet of Jesus. And Jesus will never send away those who come to him, not even to help Martha spin a few more plates. So Jesus not only tenderly rebuked Martha, he firmly redirected her. That same portion Mary was enjoying was available to Martha too. Martha, Martha, quit serving and just sit down. Come and sit down at my feet. So all of that leads us to those 2 big lessons that I mentioned at the beginning, those 2 big points of application. One to the restless server and one to the restless seeker. That's where we're going to draw to a close. Firstly, to the restless the restless server. So Martha, no doubt, was a believer. She called Jesus Lord. She loved him. She had this hope of resurrection life. I reckon in every church you can meet a Martha, a restless servant, busy, doing good, but doing so to the point of distraction. So who was Martha serving? Here's the irony. She was serving. Serving had become her savior, her master. In serving, that's how she found her identity, her place, her worth. Serving for her had grown out of all proportion. It had become the big thing. So here's the application. To the Marthas out there, to those of you who can't remember when you last spent some unhurried time at the feet of Jesus, what's needed? One thing is needed. Hear the tender words of Jesus to you. Insert your name and insert it twice. Jonny, stop your anxious strivings. Find a quiet room. Have an open Bible. Restless server. Just sit down. Come and receive from me a better portion. And here's the second big lesson, the second big point of application, not to the restless server, but to the restless seeker. There are so many people out there today restlessly searching for something to satisfy their souls, something to fill that aching void in their lives. They seek it in money, in career, in achievement, in experience, in relationship, and even in doing good works, even in serving in lots of ways. But here the lesson is clear. Only Jesus can truly satisfy. And the reason he's the only one who can satisfy is because he is the God who made us. He is the God who can save us. He is the God who came to serve us. He is the God who is willing and able to fix and to fulfill us. Jesus came to earth to get the most important thing done for us. Something that we can't do for ourselves. We can search all we like, work as hard as anybody could work. It will not give us what Jesus can give us. Will not do for us only what Jesus can do for us, which is to save us from our sin, put us in a right relationship with the living God. Jesus came to earth to do the most important thing for us. I wonder if you can remember again on the cross. Just before he died, he shouted out in a loud voice, "It is finished." The work's been done. Atonement has been made through Christ's ultimate act of sacrifice. So, restless seekers, you can know this. Forgiveness of your sin, fulfillment in your life, hope for your future can only be found in one place. Your search can even end here this morning at the feet of Jesus, resting not in what you can do, what might be out there, but resting in what Jesus has done, resting in what he offers, resting and receiving from him his free gift of salvation given to all who will come to him, even you. So, restless server, restless seeker, what's the one thing you need to do this morning? It's just sit down. Sit down at the feet of Jesus, learning from him, receiving from him, enjoying him. Jesus is the blessing that cannot be bettered. Jesus is the best of portions. Cannot be found anywhere else. Cannot be bettered anywhere else or with anything else. And if you come to Jesus, the blessing of himself to you will never be taken from you. So, will you come and sit at the feet of Jesus? Let's pray. Father, this seems like a strange prayer to pray, but we want to thank you that Jesus had feet, that our God took on flesh, that our God walked our road, that our God walked into the lives of ordinary people, that our God walked all the way to the cross, feet that willingly stepped into sinners' place, feet that stepped into sinners' shoes. Thank you for the feet of Jesus. And thank you for what we can find at the feet of Jesus. Help us, Lord, please help us to come and sit at those nail-pierced feet even now, leaving behind our burdens, our worries, our fears, our anxious strivings, trusting in Jesus for our soul's salvation, trusting that he is the better portion. Lord, would you give us the faith to do the one thing needed most, to come to Jesus even now, especially if we're weary, if we're lost, and if we're sad. May we find in him a resting place and discover that Jesus really can make us glad. Hear this prayer in his wonderful name. Amen.